Namaste and good evening. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be here talking about something I love and love sharing. So I'll start with Swami Vivekananda. And the reason I start with Swami Vivekananda is not only he's at the beginning of our order, the Ramakrishna order, but he was here in Harvard. I was researching him yesterday and I found Howard Crimson reporting the first Hindu monastic ever to come to Harvard and speak. He was here in 1896 at the Sever Hall in Harvard Yard, and he gave a talk on Vedanta. But Howard Crimson was not so much interested in Vedanta. They were interested in him. So the entire report is not about Vedanta. It's more about what a Hindu monk is like. Exactly today's subject, actually. And that was 120 years ago. So Vivekananda, he came to this country in the World Parliament of Religions in 1893 in Chicago. And there you can see him there. He spoke there representing all of Hinduism, and he was the first Hindu teacher to travel outside India and talk about Hinduism and teach Hinduism. So, and there's also a connection to Harvard, because Professor John Henry Wright, who was teaching at Harvard University, gave him the glowing recommendation. He had no credentials to speak at the World Parliament, and the credential he got was from Harvard University, from Professor John Henry Wright, who wrote a very effusive letter to the Parliament that this person should be allowed to speak. And he became a very popular teacher. He came to New York, started the first Vedanta Society where I am, and Professor Clooney spoke there yesterday. But how did it all start? So Vivekananda, who was Narendranath Datta in Calcutta in the 1880s, a young college student, and his quest was a spiritual quest, a simple question: does God exist? Can I experience God? Can I see God? And he went around, I think, putting people on the spot, and great spiritual teachers at that time, asking them, have you seen God? And what do you say to a question like that? But they finally said that there is a person who has actually seen God. You should go and ask Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who was the priest at the temple of Kali on the bank of Ganga, whom most people considered crazy. Some people considered to be God realized a few were beginning to talk of him as an incarnation of God. So anyway, Vivekananda, Narendranath at that time, goes to Sri Ramakrishna and asks the question, have you seen God? And Sri Ramakrishna actually replies in the affirmative, yes, I have seen him. I have seen God the way I see you, and you can see God too. And so Narendranath found his guru, and on his path to becoming Vivekananda, he came to this country, again inspired by the idea of spreading what he had acquired, the spiritual realizations he had acquired. In fact, the entire heritage of Indian spirituality, as he put it, 5,000 years of spirituality. He wanted to open it up to the world. And so he found a platform here in the World Parliament of Religions in 1893. And he taught here for a few years, and then he came back once more at the end of the 19th century, and then he went back to India, founded the order of which I am a part, and he didn't live long. He used to say, I won't live to see 40, and he died at 39. But the order continued to grow and has centers all over the world, about 180 centers now. And one of them was close to the place I lived when I was growing up. So my parents and my grandparents were closely associated with this tradition. And I used to go to the ashram which was close to our house, and I grew up maybe the last generation before internet and cable TV. And so I grew up reading a lot of books. And a lot of books in the house were literature written by Swami Vivekananda, and what appealed to me was, is this really true, that God really does exist? Self-realization is actually possible, and I can do it too. And so that sort of, I really hoped it was true, so because I really wanted to do that. And even when I was a little schoolboy, I always felt that this is what I should do in life. I didn't know too much about monasticism, but as I kept on visiting the monastery, I began to understand. Looking at these monks, I felt, wait a minute, these people, they're not, my parents, they have jobs and money and a house and cars and a family and people and things to do in life, and these people have nothing, none of these, and they are so happy and they are at peace. So that really attracted me, and I kept on reading. At one point, I decided I'm going to become a monk. I was doing my MBA. But finally, I remember the last assignment. I just submitted that assignment. Before that, I had I had become initiated into a mantra in this order by my guru, Swami Vivekanandaji, who was the 12th president of our order. And I had sort of, halfway through my MBA, I had gone to the main monastery asking, can I become a monk? And he very gently, he was in his 90s, he very gently said, what are you doing now? I said, I'm studying. How long will it take to complete? Is it over? He said, I had to say, no, it's 1 year, 1 more year is there. And very, very, very gently said, is it good to give up something halfway? Which was a very wise thing to say, actually. A lot of people, at least some people, want to become monks just before exams, just... I was doing some research for a midterm paper, Professor Clooney's paper, and I found in the Imitation of Christ, it says, on the day of judgment, we shall not be asked what we have read. I thought, wait a minute, every class we are asked, have you done the readings? So I did go back and finish my studies, and then I became a monk in the order. And what do I find? What is this order all about? And this is very useful to understand the entire teaching of the order. This is the logo, the emblem of the Ramakrishna order. Swami Vivekananda actually designed it in New York. Somebody came to him and asked, we need an emblem or a logo for a publication. Could you suggest something? And the description is he took a napkin from the breakfast table and scratched something, sort of drew something on with a pencil, and tossed it across the table to the printer and said, draw it to scale. And that became the emblem of our order. Now, what does it mean? It's packed with symbolism. The swan there represents the Hamsa, the symbol of the infinite, the absolute, of God, if you will. And the goal is to realize God. And how do you do it? The sun rising in the background symbolizes knowledge, spiritual knowledge, jnana. And it stands for Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge. The lotus in the foreground stands for devotion or love. So Bhakti Yoga, devotion to God. The wavy waters symbolize work, action in the world. So a life of service and doing good to the world, Karma Yoga. And the serpent encircling the whole thing symbolizes yoga, the yoga of meditation. Dhyana Yoga, or what Swami Vivekananda called Raja Yoga. And the idea is, by harmonizing all of these, by practicing all of these, one attains to the vision of God. So, in the order, if you look at the life of a typical monk of our order, you will find it's divided into meditation and study and service and devotional acts. So, early in the morning, we would get up. In our training process, in the main monastery in India, we'd get up at just like that, 3:40 in the morning. A bell would ring, and believe me, you heard it. They would make sure that you heard it. I remember, I don't know, a senior Swami sitting here. I don't know whether I should share these. I remember there was one time one of the novices got so exasperated with the 3:40 a.m. bell that he actually hit the bell. But the person whose duty it was to ring the bell was very resourceful. So he took out a big steel plate and a steel cup and banged it all over the monastery, which was worse, actually. I remember in our training period, 2 years of intensive study at the main monastery, we counted. We had 26 bells in 24 hours. And the most disliked one was the one at 10:30 p.m., which told you to go to sleep. Now, if you're already asleep, that was a very irritating bell. So in our order, to become a monk, one spends 10 years or 9 to 10 years as a novice. You'd be dressed in white, and you have the sacred tuft of hair and the sacred thread, and you're called a brahmachari. And 2 years is spent in intensive training. We study Vedanta intensively, the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutra, the Bhagavad Gita, with the commentaries of Shankaracharya and some other commentaries too. Plus, we study other philosophical texts, the introductions to the orthodox systems of philosophy, Sankhya and Yoga and all of that, and world philosophy, other religions, at least an acquaintance with other religions. So all of that is done intensively in 2 years. But there is a whole process of study and service and meditation and prayer which goes on in all of the centers of our order. So what Vivekananda did, he introduced certain innovations. Service was a very big factor which he introduced. There was a lot of resistance from traditional non-dualistic monks at that time. So this is for householders, this is for people in the world. Why should monks run schools and colleges and hospitals and relief activities in famine or flood? But over the years, it transformed Hinduism in certain ways. For example, even right now, there are most ashrams, monasteries where there are monks. People go there, and one of the things they ask is, what kind of service activity are you doing? It's taken for granted. It's a revolutionary change, really. I can share with you that one of the Shankaracharyas, the 4 Shankaracharyas in different parts of India who are part of the lineage started by the original Shankaracharya 1200 years ago, he visited our main monastery, and we were novices at that time. We remember sitting around him, and one of the questions he asked was about the service activities and how they can start. Now, this is amazing. This 1200-year-old, the Shankaracharya tradition, and they are asking how we can start service activities for the welfare of people. So this is one of the ways in which he changed it. What really do I find attractive in this particular tradition? I was thinking about it. One is this beautiful balance of discipline and freedom. For example, and it's important to me, there are no banned books. So I can read books of every tradition, whatever. I remember one of the first things that I asked one monk when I joined the order. I went to the library and he found this nice collection of P.G. Wodehouse. I don't know how many of you have come across. They're very humorous books. I asked, can I read P.G. Wodehouse as a monk? I was a new monk. And the monk said something very interesting. He said, of course, you can read anything you want. But if I find you reading P.G. Wodehouse all the time, then there's something wrong with you. So there's this beautiful balance of freedom. And recently I read Ken Wilber, who's talking about why a lot of people, young people, especially in this country, they are drifting away from organized religion. So he makes 3 points. One is, he says the clash with modern values. Sometimes organized religions, they tell us to believe something which we no longer believe in this age. It goes against gender equality or certain things. The second thing he said was that the violence between religions, this really is very off-putting, that violence, criticism, hatred between organized religions. And the third thing he said was the conflict which people see between reason and religion and science, for example, where something is taken as mainstream science and accepted by everything, and religion tells you, no, this is not the way it is. What was we thought 5,000 years ago, that you have to believe in. Now, what I liked about this tradition particularly was this freedom and this openness to new knowledge. Swami Vivekananda was all for reason. He says, a man must not only have faith, but have intellectual faith too. Harmony between religions. This is another important thing which I found, that absolutely no criticism of other religions. Sri Ramakrishna said, as many faiths, so many paths to God. So very strongly, it's part of our tradition that all religions are valid and all religions are true, and deserve respect, and we can not like an ivory tower separation from religions, but actually learn from other religions and enrich our own spiritual path. I know this kind of perennialism is not in academic fashion these days, but I'm sort of old-fashioned. I prefer that kind of thinking. And openness to the values of the modern world. So this gender equality, we have a separate order for women. Swami Vivekananda thought about it more than 100 years ago. At that time, the burning issue back in India was widow remarriage. Should widows be allowed to remarry? So there was an orthodox section who said, no, this is against religion. There was a reform section who said, yes, they should be allowed to remarry. And Swami Vivekananda's answer was very typical. They asked him, which side do you fall on this issue? He said, why are you asking me? Am I a widow? They were surprised. No, but you must have an opinion on this side or that side. And his answer was amazing. He said, give freedom and education to women and let them decide what they will do, whether they will marry or not marry. This seems rather bland, but many years ago, I heard a historian in one of our institutions giving a talk. This lady, she talked about that issue 100 years ago, widow remarriage, and she said, it's amazing that a question which is so obvious to women, no man ever thought about it. There was one woman writer at that time who wrote, saying that I hear certain men telling me I'm free to remarry, and I can hear certain other men telling me I'm not free to remarry, but nobody ever asks me what I want. And if I'm asked, I would say, I want the same freedom that men have. I want education and freedom. So you see how Vivekananda, he just felt the pulse of what was really needed. So all of these ideas, I found it very appealing, actually. Here is a beautiful picture of the monks of our order taken a few years ago in front of the main temple. This is the temple of Sri Ramakrishna in India. So after 10 years, you take the orders and you become a monk, and your daily life is this harmony of meditation and service. In India, of course, we have a lot of service activities, schools, colleges, hospitals, even a university. Here, our service activity is basically teaching. Teaching, very interesting. The whole idea, there's no idea of conversion, that you have to be converted into from Christianity or Judaism into Hinduism. Absolutely nothing. I'm in that center, the first Vedanta Society, 125 years. It's been running there. And if today somebody comes and asks me, I want to be converted into something else, I wouldn't have the first idea to know what to do, So the idea is to teach these principles of harmony and high spirituality and let people broaden their approach to spiritual life. And then, so there is this meditation and study and service activities there. I have been in a school, I have taught school children, been an administrator, as Professor Clooney said. Devotional activities, prayer, there is singing. I'm a very poor singer. So and ritualistic puja. You will find all kinds of ritualistic pujas going on in Belur Math. And you will find ashrams like, there's an ashram in the Himalayas, in a place called Mayavati, with absolutely no ritual at all. You're not even allowed to bow down in front of a picture. So all of this tremendous variety of approaches to spiritual life you find in this order. It's, again, something that's very attractive to me. I could go on, but we will talk about it in the Q&A. Thank you very much. Thank you.